So I want to do just a rant talking about integration versus premature integration, how these particular things work, dominant, submissive, masculine, feminine. It just break down some of these dynamics. And this is more so a rant. I don't have a particular topic set up before I'm going on this one. I do have one, but I didn't put it into words too much in a very clear way. So if you listen, you're going to get something out of it. It's going to make some sense, but I'm going to talk around until I get to it, right? So basically it works kind of like this, right? You have different places of compatibility. There's non-sexual and sexual. A general rule of thumb is the person who's in a position of power is the person who's willing to walk away. So the person who wants the other person more, in whatever context that is the person who's in the feminine position. Because you're more emotional about the other person. Where a masculine person is more concerned with the dynamic, the feminine person is more concerned with having that person. Now, it can be sexually or non-sexually, right? There's something to think about. Now, there are ways to avoid being in transactional relationships. But there's transactional relationships. There's intrinsic relationships. Then there's also relationships with a follower and a leader. Now, the whole idea of being in a completely equal cooperative relationship is very unrealistic. And I'm going to tell you why. The chances of two people wanting each other equally on an emotional and a sexual level, on a non-sexual and a sexual level, is not very realistic. Because one, both people are going to shift with time. Or at least one person is going to shift with time. Most of the time it's going to be the feminine party. It's going to shift with time. So even if you start off on an equal level, it can fall off with time. For whatever reason. It could be a plethora of reasons. So if you start off a relationship from an emotional front, you don't know whether or not that's somewhat transactional or whether or not that's intrinsically on a sexual level, intrinsically on an emotional level. Right? So if you start off with sex and emotions at the same time, then it may be something that's somewhat transactional and you don't know. So as a woman, if it's sex and emotions is what you're getting out of it, you don't know whether or not the man desires you on just an emotional level and he's having sex with you for you. You don't know whether or not he wants you on a sexual level and he's pretending to be emotional, right, with you and pretending to have intimacy with you, to have sex with you. You don't know. That's why I had a video where I talked about how sex and emotions have to be, the separation of it has to be learned and unlearned. Has to be learned and unlearned. Because that's how you avoid being in a transactional sex relationship or a transactional emotion relationship. So let's say a man desires sex, but he removes his desire from sex in his conscious mind for a period of time to get to know a woman emotionally. If that woman doesn't desire him on a high level sexually, and it's more so a matter of her lack of desire than her emotional discipline or her sexual discipline, then what's going to happen is he's going to invest in her emotionally. And then when they're both at a place emotionally to where they're in a relationship and they meet, quote unquote, where her standards are to be sexual with one another, if she has those true standards, then if she doesn't truly desire that man sexually, he's going to be in a bad spot. Because now he's emotionally invested. Now she may be emotionally attached, but they're not in a position to adequately reciprocate sexual desire. So the man's going to be chasing after the woman and emotionally. And then she's going to lose respect for the man and she's going to lose desire for the man because he feels entitled to sex. What you have to understand is that when somebody's doing something transactionally in their mind, that whole idea of entitlement really comes from when somebody is investing because they want something in return. And then to gaslight the individual about that return on investment, you call them entitled. Entitlement, a lot of times, is some bullshit. It's like if a man leads with emotional intimacy and the idea of a relationship, and then he has sex with a woman, and then that woman says she wants a relationship, and then she doesn't get that, or she doesn't get the emotion out of it, then it's not necessarily that that woman is entitled. It's more so that that woman hasn't been reciprocated for what she wanted on a transactional basis, right? Works the same way on the other side with a man who's investing in a woman emotionally, hoping to make a sexual return on investment. Now, I'm somebody who believes that a sexual connection can be established pretty much immediately, if not in a short period of time. But a true emotional connection, to me, that takes some time if you're a logical person, right? Because there's the logical aspect, there's the head, the heart, and the genitals, right? The head, heart, the genitals, or you could say the head, heart, stomach, and genitals, right? But you can put the stomach with the head part if you want to, right? But head, heart, genitals. So a person is typically going to have certain things in the way. So a man is typically going to put his head in the way of his heart. And a woman is typically going to put her head in the way of her genitals. But she's going to have her heart ready, right? Now, it doesn't always work that way, but it can work that way a lot of the time. So if you start with sex, a man has to behave in a way to where he isn't doing too much inadvertent behavior. Shout out to K-Zag and 20 on the inadvertent behavior line. But what happens is if a man leads with sex without giving a woman the guarantee of a relationship or the guarantee of emotional intimacy, and she desires that sex and they establish that on an intrinsic level, then a man can set his standards about what's going to be necessary from a logical place, from his head, about what it's going to take to let the sex and the emotions mix in a way to where there's going to be the social aspect, right? Where there's going to be a relationship. See, when you're a masculine dominant man, you're in control and you're leading both sexually and you're leading as far as the relationship, the overall dynamic. What happens a lot of the times is a woman will be in the lead because a man desires a woman sexually, right? Most men value vagina over they value their penis, right? So a man may lead with the emotion. A man may lead with the idea of a relationship, the social aspect of things. He may lead with his wallet. You know, like I say before, anything that you trade for sex will be used against you. Don't think it won't. One day, it may not be today, it may not be tomorrow, it may not be a year from now, but eventually this is something that's going to occur. And when you understand that, there's certain ways you got to move to protect yourself, but also to protect the woman. Right? So when we're looking at things from this particular perspective, you have to align. See, integration is about aligning your head, heart, and your genitals. So like I said, a masculine dominant man, the first thing you know when you see a woman is that you're sexually attracted. So you want to deal with a woman who shares that sexual attraction to you, and you can create that sexual attraction and build it over time to where that's something that's enough to sustain a woman on an intrinsic level to where she doesn't need more in order to deal with you, but she desires more because she has had enough time to see your character as a man and say that you're the type of man who she would want to follow, right? So that's when her head, her heart, and her vagina, they align. So one reason why I say that the man should lead most of the time is because oftentimes the things, when a woman is leading with the emotional desire, it comes from a low place, right? Where she's in her masculine energy about her sexuality, because she's in a place where she views like being dominated is something that she's not lubricated for because she's in her masculine energy. Maybe she's gone through trauma, bad leadership, she's been taken advantage of. So she doesn't feel in a place where she's secure enough to engage in sex on an intense level, on a consistent level. She doesn't have the security for that. And this is something that can lead to power struggles in relationships. Something that can lead to power struggles. Because even if things look 50-50, oftentimes somebody's getting more out of it and somebody's giving more to it. Even if you're doing the exact same things. Something to understand. So when you're in the masculine dominant position, you're going to have less emotional pleasure and you're going to have less physical pleasure because of the lack of that emotional content that goes along with it. So you integrate into that later, but you integrate into that after the other person has already aligned their head, heart, and their genitals. You have to have an adequate level of attraction, and things have to make sense for you in a relationship wise. And you have to see a capacity for a true emotional connection, right? These are some things to think about. So it's like, what are you leading with? So just like I said, sometimes a man is going to protect his heart with his head. A woman's going to protect her genitals with her head. And it's a matter of getting the head, heart, and genitals aligned. Now, I believe that people should be in a position where they can take care of themselves financially, and they can take care of themselves as far as, their stomach. So when you separate the stomach from the head, it makes things a lot more simple. When a woman can provide for herself, when a man can provide for himself, it makes things a lot more simple, because that stomach is a very strong thing. It's a very strong thing, right? So if a woman is attaching her head to her stomach and her genitals, then it's going to be a transactional sex relationship. So a woman say, okay, well, if you're taking care of me, then I'll have sex with you, which is not a good dynamic to have. Now, it's worked in the past, but it only works in survival mode. It doesn't work when you reach a place of abundance. It only works in scarcity. It only works when you're in a position of lack. And what I'll say is this, and I'm going to be completely transparent. Things are getting serious right now in the world. They are getting serious, right? So, gas prices are going up, inflation, mass unemployment. There's many things that are leading to a place where eventually society might erode and go back to a place of being a little less civilized, to where people will have to make more decisions that are based on their stomach than just making decisions based off of their head, heart, and genitals, right? So when your head has to be more aligned with your stomach, when you're dealing with the individual, that can sabotage the genuineness of the connection that you have with someone on a sexual level and on an emotional level. But a true relationship, to me, a sexually integrated relationship, is when all those things are aligned. So this is Coach Brody on aligning the head, heart, and genitals.